Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the continuation of the 2024 Town of Oakville Budget Committee. This is our second round of delegation tonight, so thank you very much, everyone, for coming and for staff for being here. We have regrets from Councillor Lischina, Councillor Duddick, and Councillor Longo. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have no consent items this evening, and again, we have our discussion items. We have two delegations that I am aware of right now. So, do we have Harry Shea on the line? I do not believe he's in the chambers yet. Oh, Harry is online and zooming in.
I am indeed.
Thank you so much. Harry, we'll give you a second there to get lined up.
So I'm unmuted, but normally there's an icon to start my video. I don't see that.
A little camera, perhaps?
Because it's generally to the right of the microphone. Okay, let's see here. I mean, I have a face for radio, so this is okay. Yeah, unfortunately, the video is not on.
Mr. Shea, we have a delegation here in the audience. Would you like a few more minutes? We can hear from them first and then come back to you. Would that help, or do you think this?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, why don't we do that? We'll come back to you in a minute there. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to Matthew De Silva and Talia Gonzalez, I believe. If you'd like to come up to the podium here. Thank you so much. There's a little button on the microphone, and if you'll just be so kind as to speak into the mic so everybody hears. I think it's on that black. Oh, it's already on. Perfect.
All on. Oh, good. Hello. I am Mateus. I've been living in Oakville for almost a decade. It is my first time actually attending one of these council meetings, so if I do anything out of the ordinary, please let me know. I'm trying my best to fit in. And when it comes to the budget for the next couple of years of Oakville, as a member of the younger generation, I think I can hopefully bring a different insight when it comes to what I think is worth some attention for the budget in the next coming few years. So to start, I think Oakville is a wonderful city. It is incredibly peaceful and incredibly calm, and it allows for people to play outside and have fun. But there's a couple of areas in the city where I feel like safety is not a priority, and that's why I feel like that in the next couple of years, this city should invest a lot of time into thinking about how to implement traffic calming across most of our residential streets. And there are a couple of spots around the city where we can see signs that say traffic calming, but a lot of the times that doesn't actually represent a physical implementation of traffic calming. It's more or less a couple of stop signs and no actual, no actual speed bumps, reduction in lane size or things like that, even right in front of schools. Thankfully, I've seen a couple of projects around schools, especially in the upper, middle, and third line area where more complex and effective traffic calming is being implemented. And I feel like that sort of infrastructure would be extremely useful to just make the city a better place, right? So people feel more safe to walk around, and especially at night, it can be very scary to cycle or to walk. There's quite a few roads and streets where I feel like people genuinely avoid it simply because it doesn't feel safe, and things like traffic calming can greatly improve that experience. And on the topic of safety and safe streets, I would also like to add that another big point that I would like that I feel that personally would be extremely beneficial to the future of the city is the focus on micro mobility and transportation, right? And there's quite a few good examples of streets where it is very clear that only one mode of transportation is prioritized, right? Which again can make people feel unsafe to walk or cycle. So I feel like it would be incredibly beneficial to implement in the near future or in the next 10 years, dedicated bicycle infrastructure and protected paths where people can be completely separated from traffic, and both of those modes do not interfere, or they interfere with each other the least as possible, because that not only makes these streets safer for both drivers, cyclists, and people walking, but it also makes the actual transportation across the city more reliable and safer. So those two are one of the main topics that I'd like to say. And again, on the topic of cycling infrastructure, I feel like that the city did pretty well compared to neighboring cities with bicycle infrastructure that we have currently. Currently, in a lot of the residential streets, we do have painted bicycle lanes, which is a great improvement when comparing ourselves to a couple of our neighboring cities and towns. But I feel like that it would be very, very great for Oakville to be the example to look at for actual protected bicycle infrastructure, where people feel safe enough to bike year-round, and to hopefully get people off their cars and allow people to get around how they want and safely and reliably. On the topic of transportation as well, I would also like to mention that another big topic, especially for the younger generation, that I feel like is incredibly important is transit, right? And I feel like transit frequency and transit reliability is one of the biggest points that I feel like Oakville Transit could be improved. I have taken transit quite a while. I do all sorts of transportation. I drive, I take transit, I bike, I walk, right? And one of the biggest frustrations that I see with people that take transit is sometimes bus never even shows up when it's supposed to, right? And there's quite a lot of ways where we can make that difference, make a difference by simply improving frequency, right? Or even having dedicated bus lanes in more congested corridors, which could make transportation across the city faster for both drivers and those that take transit. And especially for bus lanes, it's not an actually complex solution to be implemented. It's basically a little bit of paint in corridors, like in Trafalgar and a couple of other congested corridors, where I feel like that would be highly beneficial for everyone, especially since by giving people an alternative to driving, that corridor will become less congested, since people will not take their cars and instead would rather take the bus or any other method of transportation. I feel like that what has been done at Trafalgar by adding the bicycle path, separated bicycle path, which even has its own lights, is an incredibly exciting project to see finished. And I feel like that projects like that to encourage and allow people to use different methods of transportation would be incredibly useful for the city. And in general, make Oakville stand out as a city, as a sustainable city of the future, where everybody around us can look at us and be like, this is what we need to strive for. And I know I've taken a lot of time, but I would just like to mention one last thing. I know that there are quite a few projects around the more underdeveloped areas in Oakville, right? Most notably talking about Bronte Go and Oakville Go. And all these projects are incredibly promising, and they are forward-looking, and they will turn Oakville into a more sustainable and friendly city. However, I do think that in the short term, there's quite a lot of opportunities for implementing solutions to these areas where we can make them more lively and more enjoyable for everybody without having to wait 20, 30 years for it, right? Simple things like summer events or maybe temporary entertainment facilities close by to those stations and undeveloped areas, considering how much of a hub it is for the city and how important it is for everybody that commutes via train. I feel like that undeveloped area, even though it is being planned to be reutilized and to be redeveloped, in the short term, it would be quite a little bit smart to make better use of it. With that being said, just to summarize my points, I feel like that Oakville, again, is a wonderful city. I've been here for almost a decade now, and I've been able to look around and have a completely different insight to what a great city town can be. So, and all of these points come from a place of love and dedication to the town, and I simply want to see it become better and more friendly to everyone. So, again, just to summarize, I feel like the core topics are traffic calming, cycling infrastructure, prioritizing different modes of transportation, and basically the safety and well-being of everyone by providing third places and areas where people actually want to go and hang out. That's it. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll tell you, you did great for your first time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was well received. Do we have any questions from council? No. Did you leave your email with the clerk?
Yes.
By any chance? Because you've touched on a lot of things that we're actually right in the process of doing. We've got a transportation master plan coming up. Right. We have an ATM, an active transportation master plan, and we also have a micromobility study coming up. So all those things yes. You were touching on, and as well, I know a number of us around the table are always concerned about traffic calming in our neighborhoods, and we've got some of that in the budget as well. So maybe we'll circulate your email if you'd like to take part in some of those studies. I think your voice would be well received through that process, and then you can influence it as we move ahead. So thank you very much for your delegation. I see Councillor McNeese has got his hand up late here. Just 1 second, and Councillor McNeese wants to ask you a question.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Mara. Thanks for your delegation. I also just wanted to point you towards Safe Streets Halton. A bunch of like-minded folks. I don't know if you've crossed paths with them yet, but over the past year or so, we've heard from many perspectives like your own, and I think the more that you're connected and speaking with a common voice, the stronger that voice is. So keep connecting, keep advocating. It's great what you're pushing for.
100%. Thank you so very much. And yeah, just quickly to add, all of the projects that you mentioned and the considerations, I've been aware of them, and I think they're great, and I'm just trying to continue to push for that Amazing. Progress.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next up we have Harry Shea. I think Harry, if you've been able to, there you go. We can see you.
Yeah, switching to Chrome was the answer.
Well, the floor is all yours, Mr. Shea. The committee looks forward to your delegation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair O'Meara, Mayor Burton, and members of Town Council. Much like you heard yesterday with the 3 BIAs, tonight the Bronte Historical Society, the Bronte BIA, and the Bronte Village Residents Association are all coming together as one Bronte, one voice. First, we are very delighted to see that the much needed and arguably long overdue Bronte Beach Phase 2 will finally be addressed next year. We want to stress the importance of public engagement as this project moves forward. Second is the Bronte Heritage Water Park renewal. Please indulge me as I make 6 points regarding the park before our ask. First, when we saw this line item, our immediate thought was this budgeted for the additional work which is needed to eliminate flooding given how quickly the park floods. Second, we couldn't help but notice the new irrigation lines going in over the summer. Third, the Bronte Heritage Waterfront Park has become part of the fabric of this community. It is ingrained in our daily lives beyond just a stroll in the park, with or without our favorite four-legged friends. We see a wide range of family celebrations taking place on a daily basis. Fourth, initially conceived some 25 years ago as a local park, today it has taken on greater importance as the park now hosts cultural events like the Afro-Caribbean and Latino festivals, attracting a more regional audience way beyond our Bronte borders. Fifth, given the use of the park today, not just for the current residents, but from all new residents eventually coming from Midtown, a topic I delegated about in May, or just from Oakville's overall anticipated growth, future park improvements need to be identified in the 10-year capital budget. Sixth, given the overwhelming success of Lake Notes, an initiative, I might add, coming from corporate sponsorships and one man's tireless efforts, the area surrounding the sales stage should have more of a stadium or amphitheater feel to it. The fear is the continued success of Lake Notes just might be its demise if it becomes oversubscribed and the space can't naturally accommodate greater crowds. Future cultural events will benefit from these improvements as well. Our ask is as follows. Might there be consideration to scale back the $700,000 for paving, which is the actual park improvement, to half that amount to accommodate improvements around the sales stage or better drainage? Third, the Bronte Park lot redevelopment at Jones in Ontario. Is this the best use of the space for additional parking when it appears Ontario Street and the surrounding streets seem to have space available during the day? What was the utilization rate of the temporary parking this summer around the Metro Marine building? Knowing that metric might provide better insight to the importance of parking closer to where the businesses operate. Our ask is this. Might this money be better spent for other parking options closer to where the businesses actually are? If this is about accommodating the Bronte businesses, as it should, and also to reduce predatory towing, should additional parking not be closer to Lakeshore Road where the businesses are located? We support item 71, improve communications and signage in Bronte Village to help avoid predatory towing in 2024. Predatory towing has been so detrimental to our local community. We are not convinced that the province will do any better with controlling it, so we ask that the town take a leadership role. Fourth, traffic calming. Both elementary schools in Bronte Creek, Palermo area will benefit from traffic calming. Our ask is that the staff explore if St. Mary's Elementary School is a higher priority given its location on a busier road. Six, what Bronte One Voice is most passionate about is bringing the market square to life. What we now have does not represent the vibrant public square which was promised. Unfortunately, today it resembles a corporate plaza that you might see on Bay Street or Wall Street. We support the staff's recommendation with item 13 for the $35,000 to further advance Bronte Forward, which is a visionary strategy for Bronte Village. And I'd like to add, over 800 residents contributed to this plan back in 2021. Our ask is that next year, the Bronte BIA's effort to bring vibrancy and life to this space be supported by an outside professional who will work with the community to identify everyday uses beyond events that residents would like to see. How does the community want to use this space, which currently sits dormant? We recognize it will require significant work to transform the space into something truly special. We look forward to seeing further improvements identified in the 10-year capital budget. Lastly, we were surprised when we saw that the rehab for the Metro building was a modest $56,300. Our immediate thought was, if it only takes $56 grand to rehab it, why did we wait so long? It wasn't until the budget package was posted with item 14 that there was further clarification. We seem to always speak of the Metro Marine building as site-specific without viewing it in the greater context of how this space can and should be transformed and connected not only to the beach, but to Heritage Park as well. How can we discuss rehabbing the building without first knowing its future use? One Bronte, one voice believes there can be no robust discussion of how to transform the Metro Marine building until we step back and take a more transformative view of the entire area, which includes the Greblands. The Greblands can and should be viewed as the gateway to the inner harbor and the cornerstone for the future redevelopment of the Metro Marine building and the valuable real estate that surrounds it. Our ask is that the $1.5 million allocated for the Metro Marine building in the capital budget for 2025 to ensure a state of good repair, as it is stated in item 14, include a public consultation component as a visionary discussion on what the future use might be. In conclusion, Bronte is undergoing significant change, not the least of which is 3 new developments, which shortly will be built simultaneously along Lakeshore Road West, with the 4th one soon to follow. And Bronte, with a direct access to the lake, an amazing park, 2 marinas and a beach, is being expected to play a major role in meeting the recreational and cultural needs of all Oakville residents. Bronte's contribution to vibrancy and livability is no less impactful as downtown, with sporting events taking place at the athletic field and Shell Park. A range of recreational and cultural events like Lake Notes, Oakville Wind Orchestra, Canada Day, Art in the Park, plus weddings all take place in the Bronte Waterfront Heritage Park. Most importantly, there is significant untapped opportunity to improve access to the lake, the harbor, the bluffs, Bronte Creek, and the extensive trail and open spaces in West Bronte. Bronte requires innovative, bold planning and transformative investments on the same scale which has occurred in downtown. This concludes my remarks, but I would like to add one more item. Yesterday, a pirate sat among the counselors at the budget meeting, and he asked, what was the definition of a healthy, complete community? I too await that definition. I thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Shea, for that. Are there any questions for the delegate? Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, through you, Chair O'Meara, and thanks to Harry and One Bronte, One Voice for that really helps, I think, us on council when community groups get together sort of across traditional boundaries and talk things through. I do have a couple of questions that maybe I'll direct to staff. The item 71 that you mentioned, I know predatory towing's you know, a big issue and thousands of cars have been towed. So I see that from staff mentioning this is related to increased communications and signage beyond what's already there to help prevent this. Do we have any idea what the cost would be there? I see that it says would request additional budget, and it should be brought up at an additional meeting. So is that something we know now, or something that we would find out on the 2nd?
Mayor, sorry, through you, Chair. It really depends, and we would have to do a little bit of investigation on this because there is different types of signage that we can include. Traditional signage would be around $50,000 in all likelihood to do the entirety of what we're looking at. But if we wanted to do something more like we have downtown with directions to parking spaces, all that, it would be substantially more. So it really depends on the scope and scale that we'd look at for signage.
Okay, yeah, I think in the item below it was sort of referred to as wayfinding, and that would be part of the streetscaping plan that's budgeted for and coming up. But I think the ask is just for something more than bylaw signs that you know are kind of static, and obviously some people are ignoring them. But you know maybe it's working with a communications consultant that just knows another way of approaching it, whether it's you know, I don't know what the answer is, but just you know, something a little less regulatory and something that sort of promotes the actions that we're looking for. I know our BIA tries, but it does require some expertise beyond, I think, what we have currently. So, but I guess you're saying it's about 50,000.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah. Again, we'd want to scope it out more, but it would be in that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you for that. And then just a question on, I think it's item 20 that the delegate mentioned, just on traffic calming the St. Mary's Elementary School. I actually happened to be in that area today, and it does seem to be used as a cut through for Dundas and Bronte Road. And actually, when that intersection gets busy, I noticed that your GPS and Google Maps directs you to that shortcut. And so I understand why we're getting a number of complaints from residents concerning traffic safety. And I believe what the delegate mentioned, because I know it's challenging to add more budget, but could staff determine if St. Mary's being on a higher order road is a higher priority than Palermo, knowing that one will happen in 2024, one will happen in 2025? I'm not sure what the answer is, but is that something that can be explored by staff?
Through you, Chair O'Meara. We have looked at all the 20 school zones on major collectors and minor arterials that are proposed for additional traffic calming. A big difference between St. Mary's and Palermo is the number of children who are crossing the road to access the school, and that is what we use to prioritize Palermo over, sorry, I shouldn't say we're prioritized. They're all important sites. That we have capacity to do 4 locations in a year. That was one of the determining factors of putting Palermo in 2024 and St. Mary in 2025.
Okay, because I was under the understanding that because St. Mary's was on a major arterial, I believe that we didn't allow it at the time that we were sort of scoping it out.
Through you, Chair O'Meara, both schools are on major collectors. All of the schools in this program of additional traffic calming are on either major collectors or minor arterials. And so in that respect, they are the same. We've looked at the operating speeds on both streets. They are very similar as well. The key difference is the number of students that were crossing the road to access the school. And so that's what we used to put Palermo in 2024, Palermo Public School, that is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions for the delegate? Seeing none, Mr. Shea, thank you so much for your information for council. We really appreciate it.
And thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Always a pleasure. So council committee members, that concludes our business and delegations for this evening. Oh, Janet, sorry, councillor has the deal.
Through you, Chair O'Meara. Just as Councillor Algar has managed to get on because he was struggling with the Zoom, so I just wanted to clarify that. I had a couple follow-up questions that I didn't ask yesterday. Would there be an opportunity to follow up tonight?
There absolutely will, and I have to apologize because I need to poll the audience one more time because I do see somebody who is sitting on the staff side, so I apologize for that. Is there anyone further who would like to delegate? Perfect. Sorry about that, sir. I saw you move in there and realized that was a mistake on my part.
No, it's all good. Thank you.
If you can just provide your name for
yes.
For council.
My name is Jeffrey Belcher. Sorry, my name is Jeffrey Belcher, and I live in Ward 2. Okay, cool. So, yeah, I'll just start right now. Good evening. I'm really happy that we're here right now. I'm excited looking at the budget. I just spent many hours going through it. And there's a lot of good things in here. And so I just had some questions, some concerns, and a couple of specific items in the capital details part. So if you actually want to follow along at some point, you can open up the capital details PDF. I don't know if it's attached to this council, but it's along with the budget. So that gets into the numbers, which is pretty interesting to me. So again, this is the budget for 2024 to 2033. And my first sort of question was, so I noticed in the parking budget, we had a $75 million parking garage that was proposed for downtown Oakville last year. And I don't see it in this budget. I was wondering, where did it go? I'm fine with it being gone. I think it's shouldn't be there, and it's an absurd amount of money to spend on parking infrastructure, but I was just a bit surprised that I didn't see any mention of it in the PowerPoint,
So I'll help you out a little bit here. Sorry, I'm going to pause. So this is an opportunity for you to bring information forward to the committee, to council. Please raise your questions. A lot of councillors at times will then follow up with staff. So if you want to just go through your questions, go through the information you'd like to provide the committee with, we'll take that and we can either follow up with staff immediately or we'll make those decisions. But if you just want to give us your presentation,
that's
and then
awesome.
we'll work through there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so parking garage, just wondering where it went, because I could imagine a lot of good uses for $70 million, and I'm just curious. So another question, we're planning to spend $72 million on, quote, various facilities, parking lots and driveways, maintenance and improvements. I noticed in the PowerPoint that if we look at the utilization rate of parking spaces in the commercial district run by Oakville, a lot of the peak occupancy percentages that we're seeing are not even close to full. I think we're seeing like 70% in Oakville. In some cases in Kerr, the parking lots that we run are like 1%, which is like, okay, maybe we shouldn't even have those. My question was, mostly just like, is this really the best use of our money, especially if we're trying to reduce car dependency in the long term? I don't really think that it's necessarily that useful here. I'm just gonna pull up my note again. Sorry, just a second here. 52% of on-street parking in Kerr is being used at peak occupancy rates. In downtown Oakville, 64%, in Bronte-Ville, just 54%. And I noticed that there's on Jones Street, there's a parking lot that we're gonna be making, and the budget for it is around $500,000. If we're not even at our peak parking on street, I don't know if it's necessarily worth actually investing more into parking infrastructure when it seems like we're not even really cracking, or it's not really under stress, our parking, the amount of parking that we have. So that was one thing that I noted. Last of the specific questions, in the programming services budget, it's forecasting $60 million on, quote, active transportation. And I noticed active transportation is mentioned a lot throughout the budget. And as someone who's really supportive of cycling improvements in that infrastructure, I noticed that a lot of that is a bit confusing because active transportation can mean protected bike lanes, it can mean painted bike lanes, and it can mean share the road. I want to avoid share the road instances and like just painted bike lanes, because at the end of the day, we're trying to protect bikers, and share the road is just not going to do that, nor is well painted line. I noticed that Trafalgar and Dorval are share the road roads. I don't think anyone wants to bike on those roads during rush hour. So it's just one of those things that I think would probably be worth being really specific about. And I noticed as well that when we're just under that page, if you're following along with me, quote, cumulative total kilometers of active transportation infrastructure within the town of Oakville says Oakville has 1,738 kilometers of active transportation infrastructure. And it goes into detail. It says only 297 kilometers of this is dedicated to cycle lanes / signed routes. I think this is a bit of a misleading statistic, just because sharing the road, again, it's not necessarily dedicated bike infrastructure, and I don't think we should necessarily consider it as such, especially if that's what we're using to gauge how effective our cycling infrastructure is. It'd probably be worth breaking it down into protected bike lanes, separated bike lanes, and then if we want to go into share the road, we can do that, but it's really just a road. So I think it's worth going into that. There's only 5 minutes left. So specifically, there's a couple of other things I just see in the budget that I'm just questioning if it's really the best use for our money. One of the things is the expansion of the Oakville on-street parking program. Again, if we're not hitting those targets of full usage, I don't really see that expansion being that useful. And when I went on to the details of it, there's not a lot of details as to what that entails, so I'm just kind of curious about that. $300,000 is budgeted to study potential parking lot locations in Midtown. Is this really necessary considering that we're trying to make the area relatively car-free? Again, I'm totally fine with studying traffic in the area because it's a developing area. But again, if our priorities for cycling, pedestrian, and transit, a parking lot probably doesn't really fit into that goal. Yeah, $500,000 for the parking lot in Bronte is just a study. Doesn't necessarily talk anything about the actual pavement and development of it. Again, if Bronte is an urban area that we're trying to grow, I don't know if a parking lot there is going to be very effective. And it seems counterproductive. $60 million, so $30 million in 2027 and $30 million in 2029. Again, this is pretty far out, but this is for a Kerr Street improvement at the railway crossing. So Kerr Street comes along and then there's a railway crossing with the GO train. I think the idea is that we're trying to build a street to go underneath that area. $60 million is a ton of money, obviously. This project was approved in 2009. So it's been we're getting there. It's over 10 years since it's been approved. This project doesn't really benefit the rail since the rail already kind of has priority there. And so it seems like it's more of a car-dependent infrastructure investment. If this was approved in 2009, I think it might be worth re-looking at this just because a lot of our priorities have changed in the last 10 years. So if we're going to spend $60 million on this, I think it's probably worth being really clear about what we want from it. From 2024 to 2026, there's three numbers I see here: $3.5 million, $3.5 million, and $8.5 million. This is on page 389. This is part of developing the Midtown area with road widening on the North Service Road up to Iroquois Shore, and I think there's supposed to be a roundabout that's going in there. I think we should be really, really careful about road widening because in Toronto, if you go to Toronto, you see lots of wide roads, and it is just such a pain if you're an urban planner trying to develop an area that has now a center turn lane. It's such a huge amount of area to crawl back, and it's really difficult to do it once we do it. So I think if we're trying to make it an urban area in Midtown, we should be really careful about that. And if we are going to expand the road, it should either be a bus lane or it should be a cycle lane, but it should not be another car lane. And it's going to cost a ton of money, so we should be really careful about that. And lastly, I see in the programs and services, there's just general cycle infrastructure investments, and it's an annual program. It says annual cycle improvements, but the actual number varies quite a bit. It's like 600,000 in 2025, and then 100,000 in 2026, and nothing in 2024. My question is mostly just if there's really nothing that we can spend in that in 2024, that kind of is a bit disappointing because bike lanes aren't really that difficult to put in. Especially if we just invest in the existing bike lanes that we have and just put barriers. That would be pretty great. And for an annual program, I think I'm a bit confused about why it's so varying because if we look at another annual program like the Road Resurfacing and Preservation Program, which is about $9 million a year on the dot every year, that's pretty consistent. So I'm a bit confused about that. But yeah, I think it's really great. Again, I want to stress the investments in Midtown are great. The investments in cycling are amazing. The investments in transit are going to totally be incredible. We're going to see incredible ridership go up again this year. And I'm really excited about all this, and I just want to put some of this stuff on your radar so that you know about it. And yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Belcher. I appreciate that. So I don't see any questions, but what I'm going to do, if you want to have a seat there for a minute. And,
yeah, sure.
So I'm going to ask our staff to maybe speak to the capital budget at a high level and how it works. Because I know there's stuff 27, 28, like the Kerr underpass and everything, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's fixed. It's almost like a marker that we use, and that will float up and down. But I'm going to see maybe if staff will speak to two things, sort of active transportation, and then perhaps our director of parking can come and maybe just make a few comments with regards to the parking garage and maybe the occupancy rates is what I pulled out. But you were great. You provided some commentary with your questions, so I think council and committee got a feel for where you would fall on a few sides of things, which will inform us for sure. Mr. Van der Heyden, if you don't mind.
Certainly, Chair O'Meara, through you, I can try to give a little bit of an overview of our capital forecast and how we come up with that. And then I'll turn it over to probably Jill and to Jim for those other questions, if that's all right. So just as a way of background, every year when we do our capital budget and our capital forecast, we're taking a look at all the different things that are going on in the town. Primarily for the big ticket items in our capital budget, they're usually comprised of either growth items. So that's where we're accommodating for growth. That's building or widening roads, new rec centers, new libraries, new parks, things of that nature. And then there's the regular infrastructure items, which is involved in keeping items in a state of good repair. So that's replacing items if they need to be replaced, rehabbing them if they need to be fixed up, things of that nature. And as we go through that exercise each year, we take a look at the conditions of our assets, we take a look at where the growth is, we take a look at the status of the funding that we have that goes into it, and that's a decision that we make each and every year as we go through. Staff are very involved in looking at that. We have an asset management team that works very closely with our departments on the infrastructure renewal side of things. And that's why you see things change and move in the capital forecast as we consider what is the most relevant and the most important for the town to consider at those times. So that's why some projects get pushed out and some get brought forward. They're also dependent upon other funding sources and other levels of government. I think the Metrolinx one was the Kerr one that was talked about. That is one that has been in front of council many times. It's a big ticket item. So there's lots of different variables that go into that process, and it's something we spend a fair bit of time talking about with our departments, as well as with our executive leadership team as to what that capital forecast and that 10-year forecast look like. So I hope that gives enough of a background in that process, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just, I think it's important to note the ebb and flow of how things move in a year. And again, the Metrolinx, we've been waiting for them to come to the table since 2009, and they make us put money up to it. So that money's been an earmark waiting for Metrolinx to come through with that. So, but yeah, thank you for that. And I think maybe Director Stevens or Commissioner Fu, we had a couple of questions just about active transportations and which streets sort of get dedicated lanes and which ones might just have painted lanes and why, and how we do that. Maybe if you wouldn't mind speaking to that, that would assist a little bit.
Okay, through you, Chair O'Meara. So a few points on active transportation. A number of our capital projects have active transportation embedded in them. So there may be a larger project like a road reconstruction or a bridge work or something like that, and the active transportation infrastructure is part of that overall cost. So it might not be a standalone project, but it is included, and that might be sidewalks or bike lanes or separated bike lanes or multi-use trails and so on. The type of active transportation infrastructure was identified in large part through our active transportation master plan. This year we are working on an update to our transportation master plan, and it includes the active transportation master plan. So it will all be in one document, and we'll have an opportunity to reconfirm the infrastructure types that we'd have identified in the past and make enhancements to those if necessary, based on volumes and travel patterns and things that have changed since we did the active transportation master plan in 2017. Other things that have changed since that point, Book 18 from the Ontario, as part of the Ontario Traffic Manual, has been updated in 2021, I believe, and that provides new guidance for separated bike lanes, protected bike lanes, multi-use trails, cycle tracks, and that is something that we and our consultant teams will be using to inform how we make decisions about what type of cycling infrastructure goes on our streets. We do have an annual program, as the delegate mentioned, for cycling infrastructure. And this year we did not ask for additional funds because that account is for the standalone projects. We have, as I said, embedded it in a number of other projects that are ongoing. We also have a number of works in progress. So where we already have funding that's been approved in previous years, we're continuing the implementation of those projects. Sometimes we have to ask for and receive approval for the money before we can tender a project. And sometimes we may do that. It gets started on the tender towards the end of the year, and then the construction happens in the previous year, but we need to ask for the money at the time we award the work. So it's not that we don't have projects going, it's just that we had enough works in progress that we didn't need to ask for more money this year for that work. We have reviewed our opportunity to do new bike lanes just through signs and paint. We have done a lot in that regard already. There are not a lot of easy roads that are left to do. And with the update to the transportation master plan, that gives us an opportunity to review those ones that we did have identified that are not yet implemented to make sure that that's still the best approach, or whether they should be upgraded to a protected bike lane or something different. Then I would just add, we've got the cumulative total of active transportation infrastructure as part of our KPIs, and that is that cumulative total, but so that may have various different types of bike lanes included in that. I think that captures the questions on active transportation, but if I've missed something, please let me know.
That was great, Director. I think that was a fantastic overview. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Director Barry, I think we had a couple questions just within it. I'm not sure whether yourself or Kendall in the parking garage and what the status of that was and maybe the why. And then occupancy rates for parking in some of these areas. I think there were some questions with regards to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and they're great questions on parking. And I think John actually spoke about the capital budget and how it moves and ebbs and flows. And that's really the case with the parking garage. There are a lot of things going on in the downtown area, including the downtown cultural hub. And it's really finding out and determining where something like a new parking garage would fit into that, whether there's a need for it, whether it's sooner, whether it's later. And we do have our parking garage down there right now that's going to be rehabbed, and we have some good news with that, you know, we do have some extended life in that. So all that factors into where that that budget item that the delegate mentioned sits in the years to come. So it's been moved out. We are looking at it, and what I would highlight is one of the things we are doing in the downtown area is the downtown parking supply strategy. And essentially, that's going to do a lot of the work that the delegate mentioned. We want to take a look at all of our holdings in the downtown, everything that's going around parking related, and make some decisions about what we need and what we don't need in the future. And I think in a lot of ways, what was discussed was the differing opinions and polarization of opinion when it comes down to parking. We know that some people will say we need it, some people will say we don't. And with parking occupancy rates, we know that 85% when we reach that market's overparked. And if we look at a lot of our streets, we're going to find that one street may be overparked, one street may not be. So we need to develop those strategies to level out the parking, use the parking we have, and hopefully then make the decisions on what's needed in the future. So I believe that's where the delegate was going with that, and I do appreciate the question because it's a lot of work that staff go through in the background to look at those issues and try and make smart decisions for the future.
Well, thank you very much, Director, for that. Councillor Chisholm, do you have a question?
A question or a point of information just on our active transportation plan, and the young gentleman did make a point on the total kilometers of our bike lanes and separation to bike lanes, whatever the case may be. In the report, when it comes forward on the total kilometers within town, do we segregate out which is protected, which is painted, which is walkways and so forth? What does that include in the total kilometers of the laneways or bike lanes?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the KPI that's shown in the infrastructure program area only break it down between cycle. I just want to read it out loud here. Thank you. The ones that's in the right-of-way, AT infrastructure, cycle lanes, and sign routes, and recreational AT. Behind the scenes, we actually have a breakdown of all the different types, the one that's protected versus not protected, the ones on-road versus off-road. So we do have all of that in the details. What the gentleman is indicating that there's a preference over the protected type of lanes versus the shared road type, which is just a line painting. At this point, we are following the categories that's being used according to the ATMP, and certainly to Director Stevens' point that through the TMP, we will look at the definition of all the AT infrastructure, and then we could certainly define that further that is more appropriate for future KPI updates.
No, that would be very interesting in the report to identify those types of designs we have and what separated bike lanes, how long are they compared to painted ones. I think that's really important information that we going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chisholm. Okay, so Councillor Hazathil, I know you had a question earlier about if you could ask to staff. So tonight is just about hearing delegates. I'm wondering if, as opposed to sort of round two on staff on questions, is the question related to something you heard from a delegate by chance tonight?
No, they're just some follow-ups just to make sure that I'm clear before before tomorrow night's recommendation decisions.
Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead with that then?
Okay. So my first question is just around the funding, and I think it's Appendix D. So I had asked about federal funding and provincial grants. So thank you for the chart and pulling it together. But I'm a bit surprised I don't see provincial applications in play or additional provincial grant. So I just wanted to clarify, is that a comprehensive list of what we, not only what we have received, but we could potentially receive? So for example, is there any heritage grants that we could receive? Is there any other applications that on a provincial side we haven't, we didn't identify?
Through you, Chair O'Meara, just to make sure I understand the question, with the chart that's in there, is it the ones with the specific programs or the specific grants that we're currently looking at, the second on page 2, or is it the total dollars on page 1?
So it is the Appendix D. It says, which is page 1 and 2, and in the actual booklet, it's page 24 and 25. And it shows the provincial funding in 2023 at 5.4 million, federal at 11 million. And then it lists some, on the following page, project details of different funding programs. But they are all listed as federal. And so I just wanted to double check if there's provincial applications in play that may be potential to help with what is a budget that seems to be growing.
Through you, Chair O'Meara. So the list that is on the second page of that appendix are all of the ones that we are aware of that are actively ongoing within the organization, for which we don't have funding. I will say 2 things on that. One is it's possible that some of the ones you're referring to are already captured in what's been recognized, or ones that we already know we will be receiving. We did not list out all of those. It's also possible there are ones that we've just started in the application process and just are not that far along and they're not on this list yet, but that would be a little bit harder to track down for you.
Okay. And I'm assuming trying to get more information on that by tomorrow night is not doable.
Through you, Chair O'Meara, I think that the list that you have here is what we, I believe, put on the council portal of the ones that we are actively working on. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yeah, I mean, there are some requests that may come forward around heritage, around others, and so if there's other applications even in the works, understanding that holistically in terms of the potential savings that would allow us to agree to suggestions of what should be added to the budget. But I take it that perhaps that is information we could get in the future.
Go ahead, Dan.
Certainly we could. Through you, we do, to the best of our ability, maintain a list of all past, current, and application based on the council portal. So that is another place you could look that's there now. I think maybe we'll send a quick email out to staff to see if there's any other ones that are in progress that are not on there, and do our best to update the portal tomorrow.
Well, and no, I take your point that it's, I mean, there is information, but it is, if you think about the significance of some of those funds, the opportunity for that to offset what's currently in our budget, I wanted to understand if it was readily available.
So I will say that we track the grant funding opportunities quite closely. And I'm not aware of any, and I know finance is not either, of any major programs that are coming out. We do know some that are going to be rolling out in the near future, particularly the federal program on the permanent transit funding is one, for example. You know, we've already applied for the housing accelerator component. So of major programs or grant programs that are coming out, those would be the ones that I'd highlight at this point in time. Other than that, they would be smaller programs that would be available that we may not have quite updated on the portal.
Thank you very much for that. And then my other is just in terms of there's been some correspondence that's come in the last 48 hours or so. Can I just ask the chair, how are we getting answers to those, and how are those answers being made public?
Maybe I'd pass it over to Jonathan. I mean, a lot of the I would say, and I use it lightly, the word commentary that was meant for council on, you know, too much or more of this or less of that, I think is just made to color our approach to bringing forward recommendations tomorrow. But with regards to specific questions, it goes into the budget email. And to be quite frank with you, I'm not sure who takes that from our comms team or who runs with that one, but maybe Jonathan, you could step up to the plate for that one.
Sure, through you, Chair O'Meara. So I actually was chatting with clerks today about the questions that we received from yesterday's meeting, and then we'll have the same conversation from today's meeting. We have a list of which ones staff are going to report back on. None of those will be available for you tomorrow. Those are all much longer reporting back items. So I think you were correct in your earlier comments, Councillor O'Meara. I don't think there's anything for us to provide tomorrow other than polling to see if there's any more provincial grants.
Okay, is that?
Yeah, I'm fine with, thank you for the clarification. And I just wanted to also thank Parks and Rec for clarifying the additional 1,270 spaces they found through looking for opportunity and capacity. That was really excellent information to have in those appendixes, and I did want to call out that I appreciated they got it for us.
Thank you very much, Councillor. My council colleagues, I'd be looking for a motion right now to receive the recommendation. Councillor Shi, any opposed? Seeing none. So we have no confidential discussion items. I do have two quick points for committee members here. So the meeting tomorrow will be virtual. It will not be in the council chambers. So please just proceed accordingly to that. And the last is just sort of a point of clarification. And I believe in my earlier conversations with Councillor Knoll, I may have got a little, we may have got a little sidetracked in our communication. So if we had a conversation with staff over these past 2 days with the understanding that I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that as a recommendation, please email staff directly and say, I would like a recommendation that says X amount of dollars for what it is, or please develop an option for X and B and send that to them now, if possible, but at your earliest convenience. So just because it was brought up on Tuesday, so the days are melding together, does not mean that staff have got a recommendation ready for us to present to the mayor tomorrow. So you've got tonight and tomorrow with the conversations we've had. You know, staff are willing to work and put pen to paper and get that out there so we can have that discussion tomorrow. But please, a nod and a nod to Jonathan, Nancy, and myself, should you wish. So. Clear as mud, I'm hoping. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time tonight, and we will see you tomorrow, and the meeting is adjourned.